I'm Jackson Bass with Alabama Wrestling Forums, and I'm here with Coach Routon of Arab. How you doing today, Coach?
Doing good. How you doing?
Doing pretty well. Let me start off by asking, what got you into wrestling?
I just had a guy named Toby Riles, which he's a name across the sport. You might even know him. His son Hayden, but he got me out to wrestle whenever I was a kid, and then it just kept going. Kind of took a little time off. We had a little unfortunate event in Southside. Coach Blanton, he was kind of one that got the program going at Southside, and he passed away. And then Toby quit doing the youth, so he went to kind of focus on the high school because there wasn't anybody else to take it over. So I got out of it until I got back in high school. So, but Toby was a big influence on me.
Can you talk about how Coach Riles had an influence on you coaching-wise?
Well, I mean, he coached me all through Pee Wee football. Like I said, the couple years I did youth wrestling, he coached me. He came back and helped whenever I was in high school wrestling. Hayden came in. He was probably a fifth or sixth grader my senior year. So Toby had a little bit of influence with youth and high school. And then my whole coaching career until I left Southside and went to Oxford, he was part of the program. So he had a huge impact on me.
And, you talked about coaching over at Southside. Southside had just lots of success, from, as long as I've been wrestling. And what are some of the major keys to success that you have running a program like that?
Well, I mean, I was very fortunate. It was kind of built. When I was a freshman in high school, I think we had probably, 15, 16 kids on the wrestling team my freshman year. And I think 12 or 13 of us were freshmen. And so we kind of started building back there. And then by the time I started helping in 2009, which was the year after I graduated, actually, we had 35, 40 wrestlers, and had just kind of built it from, it was great back in the 80s. It kind of fell off after Coach Blanton died. And then, Robert Abernathy, Stuart Davis, and Toby, they all had big influences on kind of building that program back. So, I was fortunate, whenever I took over, we had a youth program, which that's huge. And I had some guys to kind of teach me how to get everything out of some kids, so.
I'm sorry. So you spent from 2009 to 2018, you spent at Southside, and it was a phenomenal program. What made you leave Southside to go to Oxford?
That was a very difficult decision. I coached there. I didn't graduate college till 2013. That's whenever I started teaching at Southside. But I'd coached from 2009 to then, and then just rolled right in and was coaching. I coached wrestling and football, and then once I started teaching, I coached softball too. So I was just pretty much just coached whatever I could. And then Southside was home to me. And then I had a couple opportunities to go elsewhere, and I didn't go. And Oxford, it just seemed like a really good situation, a really good fit. And I pretty much told myself, if I'm gonna leave Southside at some point in time, this is it, And there were some other things that kind of lured me away a little bit. But that was a great program to step into. But it was definitely hard to leave. Leaving home, but I always say there's a path that's laid out for you, and that was just the step I was supposed to take. So,
and you went to Oxford, and you were able to work with coaches like Coach Hicks and Coach Tucker. What were some of the influences that they brought to the table when coaching with them?
Coach Hicks had actually just left, so I didn't get to work with him. I would have loved to have worked with him, because what he's done in the sport is is amazing. Everywhere he goes, the program is going to be good. They're going to be tough. So I would have loved to have worked with him. I wasn't able to. I did get the opportunity to work with Coach Tucker, and he helped me in some areas. I'm a big believer in neutral. That's kind of what I've always done, and that's kind of what I'm bringing here to Arab too, because they've been more of kind of on the mat wrestlers. But Coach Tucker really helped me with some top stuff, and then just general practice. Just bouncing ideas off of people like that that's been in it for 20ish years. That was huge for me. Even though I was able to spend one season with him, I learned a lot from him, and we still talk. I would say at least once a week, and we still bounce ideas off of each other. Even though he's at Chelsea and I'm at Arab now, but that was huge. Just some other people along the way. Coach Connor McCall. People probably don't know him very much. He coached at Oxford for a couple of years, and he helped me both years I was at Oxford, and now he is in his fiance. They moved up to I believe he's coaching in Missouri. I think he lives in Illinois, but he coaches in Missouri. I think he's right on the state line. But just having him around, it was great. So my 2 years there were definitely well worth it.
So you got the head coaching job over at Arab High School for wrestling, and you took over for Coach Pruitt, and Coach Pruitt's done so much for Arab in the last. What were some of the challenges that you faced going into the season? Going into the season.
Well, fortunately for me, I kind of had a test run at this. When I took over at Oxford, I was taking over after Coach Hicks. And he had won multiple state titles. So kind of going in, filling big shoes. That was a little nerve-wracking, especially with me just being from little old Southside the whole time. And not really branching out anywhere, been anywhere else. So that was very nerve-wracking going into Oxford. And, coming to Arab, it was a very similar situation, taking over after, pretty much a Alabama coaching legend. The difference, Pruitt had been here for about, I think 25 years, multiple state titles. So I knew it was going to be tough. But kind of what I learned going into Oxford is, you just go in and you put your own stamp on the program. You don't really, you try to learn from some of the guys that are there, kind of what's taking place. But in the end, it's got to be yours, and you got to put your stamp on it. So really going to Oxford and taking over after Coach Hicks kind of prepared me for coming to Arab and taking over after Coach Pruitt, just because it was kind of a lesson learned.
This year was such a weird year with COVID-19. And first off, how did that affect your team?
We only had a few cases the whole season. I think we had 2 kids actually get it, and we're very fortunate. It was over breaks, like it was over a Thanksgiving break where we hadn't been in the room with each other or anything for 3 or 4 days. And then another time it was over Christmas break, and the kid was out of town, and he ended up, getting it. So the 2 cases didn't really affect us wrestling-wise. We had several close contacts just from being in the school building. There was only one time that it really hurt us. We had a starter out for the semifinals against Gardendale. So that was big. And we actually had, I thought we were going to have 2 out. We got 1 back the day of the semifinal. Bronson Jackson came back that day and wrestled. That was his first day back from quarantine. So we ended up just having 1 out. So as far as interrupting our season, as a team, it didn't really affect us that bad. But just the overall, worries, or the, worrying about how many minutes your kids are drilling with one another. Just to kind of, if somebody does pop up positive, you've only been around a certain kid for, less than 15 minutes. I mean, that was kind of the big headache of the year. As far as cleaning and everything, I know other sports, they felt like they probably cleaned a lot more than normal. But I mean, in a wrestling room, trying to prevent ringworm, staph, and all that stuff. I mean, used to mopping the mats every day. The only thing we did different was there was that fog. We had that one of those fog machines that they would fog the schools with, and about every 2 days we would fog the wrestling room and locker rooms and stuff like that. So, well, actually, I will say this: our locker room is pretty tight packed. So we actually didn't use a locker room this year very much. We kind of just dressed in the wrestling room and just to make sure we were spread out. I mean, I would let kids go in there and shower after practice and stuff, but it was limited, on how many were going in and out. So,
what were some of the challenges that you guys had this year going from, you've always been a 6A coach. So what was the biggest trouble for some of the kids going from being, 1 through 5A to going into 5, 6A this year?
I think we had I think it was a little bit of a struggle early. I've always scheduled Thompson, Vestavia, Hewitt, Grissom, Spain Park, all those 7A teams. I've always tried to get those guys on schedule whenever I was at Southside, whenever I was at Oxford. And whenever I came here and I kind of presented the schedule, and like out of our first 10 duels, 4 of them were 7A. Some kids kind of looked at me like I was crazy. But it's just it's you got to have those tough matches, and you've got to develop that mentality that no matter who I step on the mat with, it doesn't matter what their school name is. It doesn't matter who they are. You're just going to attack them. You're going to wrestle your match. And once we got over that hump, you saw a difference. At the beginning of the year, we wrestled Hoover, Mountain Brook, and then we wrestled Thompson. Wrestled those 3 schools early, and we also went to the traditional Hayden duels that they had always went to, where we wrestled Springville, Mortimer, Jordan, and Hayden. And out of those 2 duels, especially from Hoover and Mountain Brook to then going to the Hayden duels, I mean, it looked like a completely different team that stepped on the mat. It's like when we wrestled Hoover, it's almost like we were a little timid early. And then once we kind of realized that we could wrestle with our opponent on the mat, then but like whenever we stepped out to wrestle Springville, Mortimer, Jordan, and Hayden, it's like we just went out to rip their heads off. But I think it was just a comfort thing, that they've always beat them and they're going to continue to, whereas they probably hadn't wrestled Hoover in, maybe ever. I don't know. So that was a hurdle we had to get over. But I think we finally did about the middle of the season. It really started changing. Kind of, this is just what we're going to do.
I honestly thought that was awesome. I went back home for must have been Thanksgiving break, and I remember going to the Hoover Quad with Mountain Brook, Southside, and Arab, and I thought that was the coolest thing because I'd never actually seen Arab wrestle. So seeing a lot of those kids get to wrestle the bigger schools finally was like, it's kind of refreshing. And another thing that's really cool is you're a lot more – I know who you are. Coach Pruitt was a little more like they're really cliquey originally. I'm glad that they're becoming more and more open and wrestling way harder matches going into stuff like that.
Right.
So my next one's going to be, so you've coached softball, football, and wrestling. What are some of the things that football and softball bring into wrestling and vice versa?
Well, I mean, as far as a kid, football and wrestling, they translate so well together. I actually had a kid that had played football the year before I got here, and this year he decided not to play, and now he's next year. He said it's like he was missing a little bit of edge that maybe football brought him. And I think that translates the same way, if a wrestler or, on the football field with a wrestler, just that mentality and that attitude. I think they correlate well with each other. And bigger guys, I think it's the best thing for offensive defensive linemen to do is wrestle. I think core strength wise, and then just hands and feet, just moving. I think that works really well together. As far as softball, the main thing that softball taught me coaching was, you know, and I already knew it, but it was a different degree just because it was girls and just a completely different sport. But just you have to approach almost every wrestler with a different coaching attitude. Um, and that goes for all sports really. But I mean, softball really helped me with that, just because it was a completely different personality. And so I think that's what really helped me, coaching wise. Or that's what I got out of softball the most, probably, as far as coaching.
And I would say that Arab this year showed a lot of, in such a big division at state, you guys showed up and you guys showed out. And you guys had probably one of the biggest, Cinderella stories with Michael Robinson over at 220, being the 22 seed, placing fourth. What are you telling a kid like that when he just doesn't get a good draw to begin with? What are you telling him to get him all hyped to, keep wrestling?
Well, coming in, Michael Robertson he was a senior, and I asked him early on, what do you want out of this season? And he said he wanted to be a state placer, and I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to take it easy on you. He was a kid that he kind of made excuses about everything. He always had if he was late, he always had a reason. If he was tired, there was always an excuse. And I just told him that that was going to be the number one thing we had to cut out. And just going through the year, he just kept making strides and kept making strides. And I told him I was going to ride him, and I did. And a lot of kids would have quit. But he told me what he wanted, and I told him how we'd have to get it out of him. And he just kept coming back with a smile on his face, just kept coming back. So, he showed signs. He pinned Cole Fuller at Arab out here in the gym, and I don't think that kid lost in a year and a half. And so that was kind of the first glimpse of this kid can really do something. And then in the semifinals, he pinned their 220 again. It was a different 220, and that kid was undefeated. And we didn't have that great of a record going in. I told him a seed wouldn't be good, but if he would just go out and wrestle with the mentality that that he did at the state tournament, he would be fine. 22 seed, 2 seed, didn't matter. And matchups worked well. We ended up we ended a couple kids in less than 30 seconds just by throwing them. In the semifinals match, he was actually up 8-5 and locked up a cradle. And he was taking the kid to his back with about 40 seconds left and slipped off. And the kid ended up pinning him with probably 20-something seconds left. He'd have been in the state finals. But just an unbelievable state tournament he wrestled. It surprised a lot of people, but it really didn't surprise, a ton of us in here just because we'd kind of seen the potential he had. We just were hoping it was going to break out of the state tournament. It definitely did.
And another kid that definitely surprised me just in this season alone is, and I may have missed him, was with Jonathan Pugh, your 195. I may have missed him, but I don't think I'd ever seen him wrestle for Arab. And he just kind of went out there and he whooped some tail this year, placing fourth as well.
Yeah, he had a really good season. Actually, the kid from Gulf Shores, he beat 11-5 at our place. So he hasn't wrestled a season since I believe his 8th grade year. So I think he tore his ACL his 9th grade year. He tore his labrum last year. And so he's been around wrestling the last couple of years, but he was very, very rusty, not wrestling since he was in 8th grade. So we really just focused on a couple of things. So when we got a kid that was way more technical than we were, we struggled. But if we were anywhere close, being on the same technique level, I mean, he's so freakishly strong and fast that he is very, very tough to handle. We had a bad matchup with Crocker, ended up losing a close match, and then got a rematch with him and was up 6-3, I believe. Or it might have been 5-3, but we gave up an escape. We gave up a flagrant point and then another flagrant point as time expired by pulling the headgear. But I mean, it was just we were getting put in situations that we, you know, a more experienced wrestler would have been able to wrestle out of it, and he just wasn't able to do. But I mean, finishing fourth and not wrestling since your 8th grade year in that bracket was very impressive, very impressive.
And Jonathan has another year, and a couple other kids have another year. What are you really excited for in the future of Arab wrestling?
So the thing I'm most excited about right now is the fact that we have 7 registered to go to Virginia Beach. So they haven't had many kids ever go. And since June 15th, where we first had our first kind of meeting workout, and I can't even call it a roll around because we did like stance and motion drills pretty much all apart from each other. We didn't really know what we could do and couldn't do. But on that day, we weren't even talking about state tournament. We were talking about Virginia Beach. Just because I wanted to come in and change kind of the mindset of let's not be good for 1 through 5A Alabama. Let's not be good for just Alabama. Let's branch out. Let's try to get our name out there, at least Southeast wise, and see if we can get some of y'all wrestling in college. Because that's probably been, the most exciting thing that I think has happened all wrestling season for me is the fact that, I've looked on track wrestling at multiple college wrestling tournaments and seen, 10 or 15 kids from Alabama wrestling in college. I mean, that is awesome. Van Alls was, wrestled this past weekend, and we had Hudson, All-American, the kid from Gulf Shores. So, I mean, just to see all the kids, and then, I'll be going up to St. Louis here in a couple of days. Hopefully we'll pull Sam Latona out. But, I mean, it's just unbelievable, just all the kids branching out. And I'm not, like, if a kid doesn't want to wrestle in college, like, I'm not going to, force him to do whatever he wants to do, do what he can do whatever he wants to do. But I also want the kids that actually have that goal in mind. Like Caleb Rowe is one of mine that wants to wrestle in college. He's a junior this year. He won state at 170. I want him to kind of know what it takes. And that's not just setting your goal as being an Alabama state champion. It's setting it so much higher. And so that's probably what I'm most excited about is the fact that we've got 7 going. But next year we return 10 of our qualifiers, which we qualified all 14, so we return 10 starters. But we also return a state champ from 2 years ago that didn't get to wrestle, and we return a kid that finished 3rd 2 years ago that didn't get to wrestle this year. So as far as what we return, I'm very excited about our team, and I just hope that they'll remember the feeling of finishing 11 points behind Gardendale and put in the work. I know Gardendale's going to be putting it in. So.
And congrats on a great season, and I'm glad you guys are keep moving forward. Now I have a segment on my thing where I ask coaches the hot topics of Alabama wrestling. So let me start off by first asking you, do you think Alabama wrestling should be one division or multiple divisions? And if multiple divisions, what should it be split up into?
I can sit here and I can argue for 4 divisions. I can argue for 1 through 4A, 5A, 6A, 7A, or 1A through 7A, or three equal divisions. I could argue it and give you the pros for every single one of them, and it makes sense. I can also argue the cons to every single one of them, and it makes sense. So, I don't really. My mind has changed on this so many times that I've just quit even worrying about what we're going to be. I think we're still growing as a state. I don't think we'll ever be 7 different classifications, 7 different divisions like Georgia, because their 1As have hundreds of more kids than our 1As. So I think if we're looking at separate classifications happening, I think the most we'll ever get to possibility-wise would be a 1 through 3, a 4, a 5, a 6, and a 7. So if we wanted to go that route, I think what we have in place right now is best for that route. Because that's allowing the 3As and the 4As right now to grow and be able to compete immediately. And the argument to that, people are going to say that 5A doesn't have a chance to grow right now. Well, they don't, but as long as I can remember, 5A has been the biggest in their classification. When I wrestled, it was 1 through 4A, 5A, and 6A. And then when it changed to 7A, it was 1 through 5A, 6A, and 7A. So 5A's always had that opportunity to grow, and there hasn't been a whole lot of growth. So if we're looking at growing wrestling, I think what we have right now is probably the best. Now, I guess it could get better if you went 1 through 4 and then separated in 5 alone and 6 alone and 7 alone. As far as numbers go, I haven't really looked at that. One classification, I think right now, I think that would draw more interest from colleges to actually put something on being an Alabama state champion, because there's not a whole lot on it right now. You have to, you win Alabama state title, but you need to go to the showcase in Iowa, or you need to go to Virginia Beach, or you need to go to Fargo, and that's where you're going to get looked at. They're not going to say, well, he's an Alabama state champ, let's offer him, So I think a one division state tournament would benefit that. I guess if they did one division, they could still separate the duels and have a team duel champion in different classifications, and then just have an overall state champion. I guess that would be something to look at. Regardless of what it is, you might show up and be whoever's in that bracket. So.
Exactly. Now, my second question is, should club wrestling be able for kids to go year-round? And when I say that, I mean in season. Should kids be able to go wrestle club in season?
I don't think so. And I know there are some people that are going to say that they should be able to because of coaches and high school coaches. There's just not that many wrestling coaches that are devoted or that have the knowledge and all that. But, there's also not that many clubs. Like for us, for my kids to get club practice, they're going to have to drive an hour and a half somewhere to go to a club, or say, just any school out in the middle of nowhere, they're not, that's not equal opportunity in my opinion. So I don't think so. But, I've kind of caught in between, because if a kid wanted to go get some extra work on a Saturday, Sunday that he's not wrestling, if there was a room full of guys to go practicing, that would be awesome too. But, I think that takes away from the school. As far as a wrestling school where, I think you would have a ton of kids just go and wrestling club practice, and their coach showed up on the weekends and coach them in a tournament. I don't know. That's a touchy topic. So I'm not real sure. I'm not real sure what to lean with that. I would love for them to relax on us during the off season. My kids don't have a club full of 75 kids to go to. I have 2 or 3 of mine. They're driving all the way to Warrior. They're driving up to Huntsville ATA to get some work in right now, because I can only work with them 2 hours a week. So I wish they would relax that a little bit, and that would give all of my kids the opportunity to train in the off season, because I could practice them. Because right now, some of these kids, they don't have transportation to Warrior ATA, and they're not getting any work with 2 hours a week from me. So, that's what I really wish they would relax. I guess that's me, but some other people might want club practice, so they don't have to practice their own kids.
And my next one, it's going to be kind of like a two-parter. One, is Arab going to get more girls wrestling?
So whenever I first came in, that was the plan, to have a girls team and a guys team. and I was the guy that pushed that off just due to COVID. And without having a separate room, without having separate locker rooms already here, because our locker room is tight as it is already. It was just going to be really hard, and I wanted to have a full year to be able to kind of get everything in line. So we will have, I don't know how many's going to sign up. We're going to have signups in 2 weeks, and we're going to have a spring evaluation just to kind of give them a try at it, and to see what kind of interest we have, and then we can go from there to kind of work on practice times and locker room situations for that. So we will, and the plan is to have a full girls wrestling team. But I kind of pushed that back a year just due to COVID.
What do you think? Arab's a small community. It's a very traditional Alabama town. There might be a lot of struggle in getting girls to wrestle. So what's going to kind of be your pitch into getting girls to wrestle?
I mean, I really haven't even got the sales pitch yet. That's something that I'm going to, like Greg Jeffcoat, they had a lot down at Daphne. I'm going to talk with him, and Sean Welson at Thompson, JT Gosnell at WS Neal. Like, those are conversations that I'm going to have with those guys just to see, like, what made it interesting for them to come out and wrestle. And I've talked to a few girls here and there, like some sisters that we have of, guys that wrestle. So we've had some conversations, and we've got a little bit of interest with just one-on-one conversations that we've had. But as far as a sales pitch to the school or to a big group, I don't really have that yet. I don't. And like I said, I'm going to talk to those guys because they've done something right, because they have several girls wrestling. So I'm just going to talk with them and kind of see what they've done, and I'll probably mold my sales pitch after some of those guys.
Where do you think Alabama needs to go in growth, in terms of growth in girls wrestling? Or you think it's pretty much on the right track?
I think it is. It has grown. I can remember 5 or 6 years ago with it being starting in the youth, and every year I feel like there was just more and more girls that were participating, and then they introduced it into high school. I thought they'd done a great job of getting some high schools to host some tournaments. And then doing a state tournament this year was huge. I know it wasn't sanctioned by the state, but I think that was huge for the growth. Just like with Daphne winning, I think Thompson finished second. Just kind of putting that out on social media and just so everybody could see that, I think that was huge. I think that is huge for the growth of it. So, I mean, I think it is on the right track. Just like with guys wrestling, the main thing that we need are coaches in Alabama. We've just got to have more people that want to come in and devote the time, not get paid very much, and, change, because wrestling can change kids' lives for sure. So when we get more of those people coming in, I think that's when the 3As, the 4As, the girls teams, I think it'll take off at a more rapid pace.
Well, thanks, Coach, so much for doing this. And you have anything to say to my viewers before we go?
Yeah, just stay in school and don't do drugs.
Awesome. Well, once again, Coach, thank you so much.
All right, man. Thanks. See you.
I want to thank Coach Routon for an awesome interview, and I want to thank all you guys for all your support, and to keep watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe this video to get even more great content. One last reminder, today is the last day to enter the contest, so please enter that contest. We want as many people as we can so that, I'm not only giving it out to like 10 people. So once again, guys, thank you guys so much, and stay cool, Alabama Wrestling.